fatal tale of Aileen Wuornos, America's notorious female serial killer. Florida's highways stretch endlessly, weaving through serene countryside and bustling cities. But between 1989 and 1990, a string of brutal murders turned these stretches of asphalt into hunting grounds for one of America's most infamous serial killers. Aileen Wuornos, a name etched in infamy, embarked on a bloody journey that left 7 men dead and the nation horrified. Claiming self-defense, Wuornos told a story of survival. But the evidence painted a far darker picture. Behind the guise of desperation and hardship hid a predator whose actions shook the foundation of what investigators thought they knew about serial killers. This is the story of Aileen Wuornos, a woman whose descent into violence shattered lives, ignited endless debates, and left a haunting legacy. Aileen Wuornos' path toward infamy began with a childhood rife with suffering. Born in 1956 in Michigan, her life was steeped in tragedy from the start. Her father, a convicted child molester, abandoned the family before she was born, and her mother left her and her brother in the care of their grandparents. Life with her grandparents was no sanctuary. Wuornos endured physical and sexual abuse, leading her to a life of rebellion. By the age of 11, she was engaging in sexual acts in exchange for cigarettes and food. Her young adulthood spiraled further as she joined the margins of society, surviving through petty crimes, run-ins with the law, and eventually prostitution. By the 1980s, Wuornos had made her way to Florida, working as a prostitute along highways, a profession that placed her directly in harm's way. But few could have predicted the violence that was to come. In November 1989, the peace of Florida's open roads was shattered. Wuornos' first known victim, Richard Mallory, a 51-year-old electronics store owner, became the first entry in her gruesome timeline. Mallory had picked Wuornos up along the highway, unaware that this encounter would end his life. Wuornos claimed that Mallory had assaulted her and her actions were purely in self-defense. But the brutal way in which Mallory was killed, shot multiple times and left abandoned, raised immediate suspicion. This marked the beginning of Wuornos' killing spree, one which would span the better part of a year. Following Mallory, Wuornos went on to murder at least 6 more men. Her victims, ranging from transportation workers to retired officers, all met their ends under similar circumstances. Each case began with an unsuspecting man offering her a ride, perhaps a transaction, and concluded with cold-blooded execution. While Wuornos claimed that she acted in self-defense each time, the evidence stacked against her told a different story. Her victims were often robbed, their cars abandoned or stolen, and their bodies dumped without remorse. By mid-1990, suspicion began tightening around the mysterious deaths along Florida's highways. Law enforcement pieced together strikingly similar patterns, but the killer's identity remained elusive. On July 4, 1990, Wuornos made a critical error. While driving a car stolen from one of her victims, she crashed it. Eyewitnesses at the scene identified her, providing law enforcement with the first breakthrough in the case. Authorities discovered that the stolen car had connections to one of the murder victims, and a search for Wuornos gained momentum. With this mistake, the walls began closing in on her. Investigators followed leads meticulously, piecing together a timeline of Wuornos' movements, her purchases, and her contact with each victim. But to secure a solid case, they needed more than evidence. They needed confession. Key to Wuornos' arrest and eventual conviction was her partner and lover, Tyria Moore. Wuornos' relationship with Moore was deeply emotional, bordering on obsession. Law enforcement recognized the potential to exploit this bond and used Moore as bait. Tyria Moore was persuaded to cooperate with investigators to avoid legal consequences for the crimes. She assisted police by engaging Wuornos in a series of recorded phone calls. In these conversations, Wuornos confessed to the murders, demonstrating both her emotional volatility and unwavering attempts to shelter Moore from culpability. With this damning evidence, authorities cornered Wuornos. Her arrest in January 1991 marked the end of her reign of terror along Florida's highways. Aileen Wuornos' trial was a spectacle, one that drew national and international media attention. The public wrestled with the notion of a woman being a methodical serial killer, something that defied typical criminal profiles at the time. The prosecution painted Wuornos as a manipulator and predator, killing in cold blood to satisfy her personal gain. On the other hand, her defense tried to portray her as a victim, molded by a lifetime of hardship, abuse, and exploitation. The trial, which began in January 1992, ended with a guilty verdict for the murder of Richard Mallory. Wuornos would later plead guilty to the murders of 5 other men. She received 6 death sentences, the legal system's strongest statement of condemnation. During her years on death row, Wuornos's mental state unraveled. Her public statements became erratic, oscillating between confessions of guilt and declarations of innocence. She often painted herself as a victim wronged by society, a system that failed her, manipulated her, and ultimately condemned her. Her strange behavior in interviews provided further fodder for the media, cementing her place as a macabre fascination within the true crime genre. On October 9, 2002, Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection. Before her death, her final words were eerily cryptic. "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back, like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6. Like the movie Big Mothership and all, I'll be back." Her execution concluded a chapter in true crime history that continues to spawn fascination and debate. Aileen Wuornos' life and crimes remain a chilling reminder of the darkness hidden within human society. Her case is a flashpoint for discussions about the intersection of trauma, crime, and justice. Wuornos' story raises uncomfortable questions. Was she a predator shaped by her circumstances, or were her actions fueled by something far darker within? Her crimes have since been immortalized in books, documentaries, and the Oscar-winning film Monster. These portrayals alternately depict her as a victim of poverty and abuse, or as an unapologetic murderer driven by vengeance. Aileen Wuornos' tale isn't just a cautionary narrative about crime. It's about survival, morality, and the complexities of human behavior. On the surface, she stood as a transgressor, a killer who struck terror into the hearts of many. But digging deeper, her story compels us to look beyond the bloodshed, to examine the fragile line between victim and predator. Her legacy endures not because of the numbers tied to her killings, but because of the dark reflection her life casts on society itself. For true crime enthusiasts, her story remains an eerie, gripping journey into the depths of true human horror. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like to show your support. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update from Evil Unmasked. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below with your theories or suggestions for future topics. Stay curious, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.